you in for a treat today because we are about to see a very interesting neighborhood, one that even if you live in LA or have visited, you've probably been to, although you most likely have no idea that it's even called Hollywood Heights. It's not a new name. It was given to it when it was developed in the first part of the 1900s. It's primarily residential, although there are 3 or 4 major Hollywood attractions we're going to see. We're actually going to start pretty big by visiting one of them first. Then it's going to get pretty quiet, pretty intimate, and it's going to feel so secretive that you'll wonder if we're even allowed to be where we are. It's a very unique and wild neighborhood, and there is so much to see. So let's dive in to Hollywood Heights. Up here where Highland Avenue kisses the 101 freeway before turning into Cahuenga Boulevard up there, at the northernmost part of Hollywood Heights sits one of LA's most truly, my favorite word to overuse, iconic landmarks, and really one of the best music venues in the entire world, the Hollywood Bowl. But we cannot go in without talking about the beautiful art structure that greets you upon your arrival. The Muse of Music, it's called. The Music Muse, she sits at the very top of the 22-foot high, 200-foot long sculpture, which is carved out of 300 tons of granite. There are actually 3 muses in total. Down here at this end stands the Muse of Dance. The entire Art Deco streamline masterpiece was designed by sculptor George Stanley. And from here, you can see that the Music Muse is kneeling and playing a harp, but we'll go around to the other side where we can see it better. But how about this? And when you hear it, it makes total sense because you'll see the inspiration in his work. But Stanley also designed Oscar, Mr. Academy Award himself, for the 1929 ceremonies. And this design of his came 10 years later in 1939 and was completed and unveiled in 1940. The bull was only 17 years old when it had this installed, and this entire project, it had a price tag of close to $125,000. There you can see the third muse, the Muse of Drama, depicted with the masks of comedy and tragedy. Really is a beautiful sight, but it's not on the side of the road that has foot traffic when you come to a show here at the Bowl. And most people, they're just driving by so fast that I think it's really an underappreciated gem in this city. Iconic and underappreciated. I mean, how is that for an oxymoron? before we go inside, we would check out the area behind the Hollywood Bowl stage. It's kind of the best way to show you just how it's all positioned down in this canyon, once called the Daisy Dell, which was part of what was once called Bolton Canyon. Both names long gone. This entire area, I mean, you can't even see it all. It was empty land, popular for picnic spots, until 59 acres of it were purchased by the Theater Arts Alliance around 1918 or 1919 for $47,500. Their goal, it was to build a community park and art center. Well, in 1920, a soprano named Anna Sprott, along with a composer pianist named Gertrude Ross, they hauled a piano down to the center of this dell so they could test out the acoustics. It was to help figure out the placement of the stage and seats and to really come up with the best design tactic. And, you know, you could technically call theirs the very first performance at the Hollywood Bowl. This is one of the, well, it's pretty much the main entrance into the bowl. And look, I am not unique by telling you how much I love coming here. I don't think I've ever met anyone who doesn't love coming to a show here. Hollywood Bowl season it's just one of the most magical times in Los Angeles. The variety, it's really the best part. I mean, there's rock shows and pop shows, opera, classical symphonies, live action shows. They do movie sing-alongs. I mean, the calendar is packed, and I've seen way too many great shows here to even try to mention them. Honestly, I think the one that might go down as my favorite wasn't too long ago. It was 2021, Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill 25th anniversary tour. I think about that show quite a lot. And I'm sure you can tell, but we are, well, you have to go up. You have to climb your way to the Hollywood Bowl. You can take the escalators, but you have to go up to go down. And you really don't come here to see your favorite artist, although Alanis is one of mine. You come here for the experience, for the adventure. Truly, the best seats are further back. You want to sit back far so that you can take it all in. Oh, bring a cushion or just rent one for $1. Trust me, your ass will thank me. And some shows, make sure you check. They allow you to bring your own food and drink, and those are the best nights. I mean, look at this place. Oh, I love it here so much. I really do. You can bring a charcuterie board or In-N-Out, or a charcuterie board and In-N-Out, some wine, whatever you're into. Just have a night to remember, at a place to remember. All right, from up here, you not only get a breathtaking view, but you can really see why it's called the Hollywood Bowl. From way up here in the very last seats, you really see the entire bowl shape. Most people think that it gets its name from the round shell on the stage, but no, it's because of the entire bowl-shaped canyon. The stage just happens to be at the bottom center of this bowl, right where those two ladies and their piano tested the acoustics back in 1920. Also in 1920, that little wooden platform stage that those two ladies and their piano used also served as the very first graduation ceremony for Hollywood High, a tradition that continues to this day. I mean, how sick is that? You graduate from Hollywood High and this is where you come get your diploma? The following year, 1921, the very first Easter service was held on that tiny platform. Also another tradition that still continues. Started out non-denominational and has continued to be. 1921, it also marked the first time the LA Philharmonic performed at the initial early stages of the bowl. By now, they had installed wooden benches to accommodate about 800 people. But everyone else who wanted to attend, they sat on blankets along the hillside. But the stage and seating, it grew and grew. And officially, the Hollywood Bowl, as it was now being called, had its opening on July 11th, 1922. Symphony Under the Stars, they called it, with the LA Philharmonic. Also, a tradition that has continued every summer. However, tickets are no longer 25 cents as they were back then on opening day. In 1923, the city... Don't worry, I'm not going to go through every single year. Could you imagine? It'd be 100 stories. No, we're going to go through the 20s, though, and I have to tell you this, it kills me. In 1923, the city, they decided to repave Highland Avenue, but the bowl leader, a woman named Artie Mason Carter, fought it. She was like, you can't, that would disrupt the bowl season. People have already bought tickets. They won't be able to drive here. It'll be a nightmare. Absolutely not. But the city persisted. Well, so did she. In fact, she and a couple of friends grabbed rocking chairs. They placed them right in the middle of Highland Avenue and proceeded to knit. And look, their style of protest worked because the city packed up and rescheduled their work until after the Hollywood Bowl's 1923 season, which, by the way, saw the addition of 150 box seats right in front of the bench section, and they also added these Greek columns to the stage. The following year, 1924, the bowl property and the land was deeded to the County of Los Angeles, and the Hollywood Bowl Association became their official organization. And 1926, I think, is the most important year. That's when the bowl took on a much bigger project, enlisting the help of Myron Hall, who designed the Rose Bowl. This project would involve digging into the land to create this balloon shape area with permanent seating going way up into the land where we are now, as well as, yep, here it finally comes, a shell-shaped dome on the stage. The shell shape didn't initially work. So for the 1927 season, Lloyd Wright, the son of Frank, designed more of a pyramid-shaped shell. It had really fantastic acoustics, but people thought it was too much, so it was demolished at the end of the season. Lloyd Wright, he swore that he could design something better, so the bowl gave him a second chance for their 1928 season. His new shell would consist of 9 segmented arches, designed in the new streamlined modern fashion. Each panel could be altered to accommodate the acoustics and could easily be dismantled if it needed to be. They would take them down for Easter Sunday services, which just packed the seats. Unfortunately, though, the panels, they weren't stored properly and they didn't make it to the 1929 season. Allied Architects, they had to build a new shell, and believe it or not, it was the shell that lasted all the way until 2003. Various pieces and parts were replaced and improved over the years, but it was this shape and design that would give the bowl its iconic look. Now, I told you how the bowl was very popular with Easter and symphonies. Also, a ton of plays have been performed on the stage. Lots of different events throughout the 1920s and 30s, but on August 14th, 1943, the game was changed when Frank Sinatra became the very first pop star to appear at the bowl, and it was with the LA Philharmonic. This opened the door for so many performers, including Ella Fitzgerald, the First Lady of Song. She made her debut in 1956, and Miss Fitzgerald holds quite an honor. She's the only person to have sold out all 18,000 seats of the bowl in 5 different decades, up until her death in 1996. And in 1953, they installed a reflecting pool down in the front, 106 feet long and 36 feet wide, could hold 100,000 gallons of water. In 1959, they installed fountains in the pool. But in 1972, 19 years after it was installed, the bowl did away with the pool and the fountains. It was causing much more damage than anything, so they drained it and filled it in. But in honor of the old pool, in 1995, they installed closer box seats and they renamed the entire section the Pool Circle in memory of what once was. So if you're one of those fancy people who's ever sat in the Pool Circle, now you know why it's called that. The bowl absolutely thrived during the 1960s. Leonard Bernstein performed here in 1963. But I want to tell you that Richard and Karen Carpenter, 2 teenagers from nearby Downey, entered the popular annual Battle of the Bands competition here, winning 3 trophies before they went on to become the Carpenters. You, of course, can check out my documentary on them here on YouTube. In fact, I tell that part of their story here. However, the biggest act to hit the bowl came from across the pond in the form of the Beatles in 1964. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of teenagers spent the night out on Highland Avenue, camped out, waiting to get tickets. The show sold out in 3 hours and was still 4 months away. When the day finally came, the fans were so loud, crying and screaming and carrying on, that nobody even heard the music, and the Beatles had to escape in a Dodge Dart. They returned the following year, this time in an armored truck. But talk about opening the door. They opened the door for every pop star and rock group to play the bowl, and pretty much all of them have. Well, everyone except for Elvis Presley. There's a little trivia for you. He's one of the only big, giant, huge names never to have played here. But the whole pop and rock scene, it was just booming, especially the LA scene. The Mamas and Papas, and of course the Beach Boys, who still perform here. Jimi Hendrix jammed out here, Janis Joplin, Bob Dylan, Sonny and Cher, Simon and Garfunkel, The Who, The Doors, Sly and the Family Stone, The Supremes. They actually debuted their new lineup in 1967. Diana Ross, Mary Wilson, and Cindy Birdsong, who replaced Florence Ballard. Even Judy Garland, she performed here. She was greeted with rain, but legend has it that nobody left. The 1970s, they were just as great for the bowl. You had Elton John, the Jackson 5, the Grateful Dead, James Taylor, Jefferson Airplane, Pink Floyd. But also, after Star Wars became the massive hit that it, still is, John Williams made his debut at the bowl. It was in 1978, and he has been conducting his own film scores here ever since, and is by far one of, if not the most popular night at the bowl every night that he's here. to tell you about a very embarrassing period in the Bull's career. Can't even look her in the eye, though. She's so embarrassed. Architect Frank Gehry and an acoustic engineer, they were hired in the very early 70s to improve the sound. So, they installed these unsightly, giant, I guess they were called sonotubes, that not only took up the entire stage, but they extended out into the wings, and people had meltdowns, rightfully so, saying that the entire shell was blocked. You couldn't even see it. Just looked like these big obstructions haphazardly placed. Just a mess. Luckily, they didn't last long. It's like when a friend gets just a terrible haircut and you can't do anything about it. You just have to wait for them to, like, grow it out. Ugh. So Frank Gehry was like, all right, I hear ya. So he came up with something, I guess, a little better in 1980 when they hung these big giant balls, these big hollow spheres made of fiberglass. They hung from the top of the shell, about a dozen of them. They just hang from the top, and I guess are engineered to, I don't know, allow musicians to help hear one another better. I have no idea how physics work, but sure. Makes sense. But back to the fun stuff, like in 1982, when the Go-Go's became the very first all-female rock band to ever perform here. Ray Charles performed for the first time, Miles Davis also performed, and Leonard Bernstein, he returned to conduct Beethoven's Symphony No. 3. The 90s, they were also fun. Paul McCartney came back, this time as a solo act. And how about this show? An AIDS benefit, which was actually an episode of the Arsenio Hall show. It was 1993, and Madonna performed with Anthony Kiedis of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Tina Turner did a show here too, another AIDS benefit, and also in 1993, Whitney Houston performed while on tour promoting The Bodyguard. Oh, and 1996, I have to tell you, my dear lovely friend Carol Burnett performed Broadway songs with the Hollywood Bowl Orchestra, and she would go on to marry a musician named Brian Miller in 2001, who has done a lot of work with the Hollywood Bowl. And the 2000s saw Radiohead, Bjork, and Aerosmith all making their Bowl debuts. And like I said, a new shell was installed in 2004, and that included the addition of 4 giant screens that would now project the show for those way up in the back. Crazy that it's been 20 years since that happened, but the Bowl continues to flourish. It attracts a ton of great talent and huge names, and here's a fun little secret. This is a park, and it's actually opened every day until 3. Well, you might want to call first. Sometimes it's closed depending on what show is that night, but it's usually open to the public. You can come down here and check it out, and some people even come and use the stairs to exercise. Back out here in the concession entrance area, tucked over in a corner, is a plaque dedicated to the man who is actually credited with naming it the Hollywood Bowl. Kind of seems like one of those places that just sort of ended up being called the Hollywood Bowl, but No, Hugo Kirchhofer gets the credit. He was one of the very first founding musical directors here at the Bowl. He conducted 33 Easter Sunday services, which were just so unbelievably popular. This plaque, it was dedicated to him in 1954, and he died the following year. I'm actually going to tell you a little bit more about him when we see his beautiful house a little later on, just down the street. If you saw a show here before 1962 and you sat far back, you had quite a hike to your seat, but that was the year they began installing the people movers that are now packed with people on show nights. They used to be uncovered, but then I don't know, what is this called? A roof? Awning? Top? Cover? Lid? I have no idea what it is. Awning, I guess? I've been out in the sun too long, I can't think. That's why it was built. I should go stand under it. The story behind this plaque over here is really quite fascinating. Over in Beechwood Canyon, the neighborhood where the Hollywood sign is, minutes from here, was a setting for a 1916 production of Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. It wasn't just a play, though. It was a spectacle, one night only, and it involved the entire street. The cast alone included 5,000 people. 1,000! Dancers, actors, singers. It also starred two giant movie stars, Tyrone Power and Douglas Fairbanks. Apparently, 40,000 people came to see it. They were lined up in bleachers all along Beechwood Canyon, and they watched as the cast marched up the street, ending up on a massive stage with a very lavish set, courtesy of some major motion picture people. The stage sat where what we now call Beechwood Village, where the Beechwood Market and Cafe are. But it was such a success that they wanted a permanent place to put on these big splashy shows, hence how their search led them here. So in 1922, they did another production of Julius Caesar, this time here, and that also starred Tyrone Power. Anyway, it's a great little story about inspiration and a good reminder to support the arts. It can really lead to great stuff. So I told you that the Theater Arts Alliance paid $47,500 for this entire place. Well, the president of that alliance, her name was Christine Stevenson, she wanted to focus primarily on, I guess, religious performances and religious plays, but her partners were like, nah, that's okay. So she sold them her share of the land, and she set up camp across the street where she opened the Pilgrimage Play Theater, which we now know today as the Ford Amphitheater, the John Anson Ford Theater. And she did her religious thing there. And up the hill from the theater is that 32-foot high steel cross. It even lights up at night. It was built in her memory, but today the land is owned by a church called the Church on the Way, which is located about a half hour away in Van Nuys. Real quick while we're up here, we're at the very last people mover, the one that takes you to the last of the seats. But since we can see across the parking lot next to the bowl, facing south now, just wanted you to see a house that we're going to see more of on the tour. I'm not going to tell you yet who lived there, but when you hear who did, it will make their proximity to the bowl even cooler, and you'll really wonder what all they heard. Let's just call it the Love House for now. This is the box office courtyard area, just on the other side of the concession stand area where we first walked in. There's a gift shop and a little cafe up there. It's really surreal how many people can fit here on what was once a dirt pathway called Pepper Tree Lane, named after the pepper trees that once grew here. They are no longer, but they still call it Pepper Tree Lane. This was all just dry land until 1938, when the bowl decided to build a tea room right here. It was made of stone and resembled a large house, complete with a bay window and a visible fireplace that was usually roaring, turned into a full-fledged restaurant. Could seat up to 100 people inside and about 600 people outside in the adjacent garden. Also, you have to check out these posts where the pepper trees once were. They each have letters on top spelling out Hollywood Bowl all the way down to Highland. And on show night, I mean, this area will just be packed. People eating in the patio there, merchants selling memorabilia of whoever is performing. It's chaotic and crazy, which is probably why most people don't even pay attention to the fact that there is an actual Hollywood Bowl museum right where the tea room once stood. And I am one of those people. I had no idea this place existed until today. Well, I probably knew it was here. I don't know. Never been inside, not until today. Luckily for us, we get the entire place completely to ourselves. It's really a charming little museum, and I love that it's where the old tea room was. Although I kind of wish they bring that back. You could still have both. But this is great. You get to see some great photos, hear some great clips, get to see some models. There's all 5 examples of the Hollywood Bowl's career. But it's pretty small. You can be in and out of here pretty quickly. I love this area over here, though. It's dedicated to the Bowl's usage in film and television throughout the years. Really, way too many projects to even mention, especially when you add in all of the concerts that were filmed here. Wasn't sure I could come up here at first. An awfully long stairwell for a small museum. But there is a second floor. It really focuses more, though, on the business part, the money part, the land part, the boring part. To me, anyway. Give me Melrose Place at the bowl, you know? Oh, I love this. R.D. Mason Carter, who I mentioned before. She's really one of the most influential and important people to the bowl's history. Without her, you could say it probably wouldn't exist. She did a lot. Oh, and I guess they have the models again, the replicas. This time you can see them a little bit closer and probably touch them. I mean, no one's looking. It's pretty cool seeing them. I still can't get over the Frank Lloyd Wright one, though. I love him, but it's just so out of place. And it's really impossible to cover all the bowl's history, especially on my tour of it. I mean, it's over 100 years old, so you'll definitely learn some more things if you get the chance to check this place out. How great is this, though, the newspaper wall? I have a large box of old newspapers with some pretty monumental headlines. I should cover the garage or something with them. Oh, and over here we have the Declaration of Independence? No, it's a register of the Bowl's patrons. I thought it was a guest book at first. How cool would that have been? A Hollywood Bowl sign-in sheet. Anyway, that pretty much does it for the inside of this quaint little Hollywood Bowl museum. All right, that concludes the Hollywood Bowl portion of our Hollywood Heights tour. I recommend coming here someday when there's not a show, either with a friend or by yourself. It's a really unique way to experience a place that is mostly only experienced in the presence of thousands and thousands of other people. And it's totally free, even the parking. You can pull right up and park by the main entrance. It's just a great place to walk around, bring a sandwich, sit in the seats if you want to. You really won't be bothered by anyone. You'll see groundskeepers here and there, and there's a security guard making sure you don't jump on the stage, and maybe some other visitors, but it's usually a really quiet spot. But if you can't get out here for some one-on-one time with the bull, try your best to at least see a show here. It's just mandatory. Heading south down Highland Avenue, we have cleared the Hollywood Bowl parking lot. This is the lot we looked out across when I pointed out the house, the one that I called the Love House. We're heading into the neighborhood portion of Hollywood Heights. Actually, the entire Bowl parking lot used to be houses, but several of them were torn down to build the lot. I just want to go up here real quick to give you a little peek. Remember this spot because we are going to end up here a little bit later. We're going to start in this park first, though. Another area that used to be homes that are long gone. Well, some of them. They lined Highland Avenue, now replaced by this vine-covered wall that covers just an abundance of charm. I'm willing to bet that most people who live in LA who drive by this wall have absolutely no idea what's behind it. It's like that M. Night Shyamalan movie, The Village, because it's an actual village, except nobody lives here, not anymore, not since it became the Highland-Camrose Park in 1996, or if you're me, it is the Linda Ronstadt Park. More on that in a sec. But all of this portion of Highland Avenue that you've seen so far, it was all filled with businesses and apartments and homes, all now long gone. But this particular block was known as the Camrose Bungalows. Development began back in 1900, and by 1924, 14 bungalows occupied the almost 2 acres that you see now. But by the early 1980s, those 14 bungalows sat here run down and decaying. A handful of them were even boarded up and vandalized. It was a very sad sight, but some passionate tenants and neighbors got together and had the village saved in 1985 by having it declared a historic cultural monument, and in 1989 it found its way onto the National Register of Historical Places. And I'm sure you're like, why is it a landmark, and where is this abundance of charm? Well, you're about to see that a handful of those bungalows were actually salvaged, and they were restored and are now used as offices and meeting centers for the Hollywood Bowl, the LA Philharmonic. I think LA Parks and Recs has an office here, and so does the Sheriff's Department, but it's ours too. It's open to the public, and while it's empty now, it will be pretty packed in a couple hours before showtime at the Bowl. It's a fantastic place to meet up with your friends or family before seeing a show. have a picnic. There are plenty of tables. This park, it was actually a satisfying compromise because a condo developer was going to build a huge complex here. That's when those heroic tenants stepped in. They didn't mind a park as long as they would try and salvage the bungalows that could be saved. And the reason why they're so special is that it's the only hillside cluster of craftsman-style bungalows still in California, not just in LA, but the entire state. See, most of the multiple craftsman bungalow layouts that you see all over LA today has them situated on flat land with a pathway down the middle and usually with a fountain in the center. But not these. These were built into the hillside, only connected through paths and stairways. It's a very unique layout. And originally, these were all built to house people working in the crazy new world of moving pictures, as they called it. There was an LA Times article written in the early 90s when this place was crumbling away, and they mentioned that our pal Tyrone Power, Laurel and Hardy, and everyone's favorite person to name drop, Marilyn Monroe, all once lived here. She lived in every single building in Los Angeles, apparently, but I found zero proof that any of those people ever lived here. However, a silent film comedian who often worked with Laurel and Hardy did live here, a man named Harry Langdon. His son, Harry Langdon Jr., is a very successful photographer, almost 90 now. But we also know that one of rock and roll's original queens, Linda Ronstadt, lived here. She lived here with her boyfriend at the time, singer-songwriter J.D. Souther, who, I cannot believe this, just died a couple of weeks ago. They have both talked about living here. Unfortunately, neither of them got specific, so I'm not really sure which bungalows they lived in exactly. Hopefully not the one turned into the restrooms, but it gets even crazier. See, Linda, she was already pretty successful when she rented her home here. She already had 2 songs out, which I love so much, Different Drum, and a song that, it has to be in my top 5 all-time favorite songs, Long, Long Time. I could never convey just how much I love that song. And apparently, Jackson Browne also lived in a bungalow next to Linda and JD, but wait. Linda was putting together her big tour, and she was recruiting musicians. One of them, who she hired, was a guy named Don Henley, who naturally moved into one of the bungalows. And keep waiting, because JD, he had a buddy he loved to hang with and play guitar with. His name was Glenn Frey. Linda loved him too. She wanted him for the tour also. Well, something special was happening while Don and Glenn were teaming up. Everyone saw it. They knew they had to do something bigger, and with Linda's blessing, her 2 new musicians decided to form their own band, and they would call themselves the Eagles. Don, he's even said that he finished writing the band's second single, Witchy Woman, in Linda's living room here because it was bigger than his. But it was their follow-up album that had a song that nobody really knew what to make of. It was called Desperado. Didn't do well at first. It wasn't until Linda covered it and made it a huge hit that people got it. And now in retrospect, of course, the Eagles version is much more appreciated and respected than it ever was. I mean, am I saying that Linda Ronstadt is responsible for the Eagles and their massive success? Yes, I am, and that is why it's called the Linda Ronstadt Park.
Take things in stride. Sounds like good advice, but there's no one in my side, and time washes clean love's wounds unseen. That's what someone told me, but I don't know what it means, 'cause I and I think I'm gonna love you for a long, long time. Caught in my fears, thinking back the tears. I can't say you hurt me when you never let me near, and I never drew one response from you. All the while you fell all over girls you never knew, 'cause I've done everything I know to try and make you mine, and I think it's gonna hurt me for a long, long time. Wait for the day you'll go away, knowing that you warned me of the price I have to pay. Life's full of flaws, who knows the cause? Living in the memory of a love that never was, 'cause I've done everything I know to try and change your mind, and I think I'm gonna miss you for a long, long time. I've done everything I know to try and make you mine. I think I'm gonna love you for a long, long